everybody, and welcome to Formula Facts, episode 6. I'm Jack Like. I'm joined here with
Destinee Day.
Well, Destinee, another race weekend, another relatively interesting race, right? So let's get into it. We'll talk about Bahrain. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get to watch the race until last night or yesterday morning, so it's fresh on my brain. Oscar win. I finally got a prediction right, so let's celebrate that for a hot second, because although I didn't want him to win, my prediction was correct. So yay, we're finally getting better.
I know. It was good. I got to watch the race live, so I didn't have to put my phone on Do Not Disturb and hope I didn't get a notification, close my eyes, they open up Formula One TV, making sure there's no spoilers. But overall, I think it was a pretty good race. I think something we'll go probably from the beginning to the end, right? So something we saw in the beginning, Lando Norris, right, starting 6th on the grid, which is something weird, for him and not what we expected out of that car. And then what a start he had. Oh my gosh. It was ridiculous.
It was there's a lot of emotions tied to that, right? One, Lando and Max are both further back than we would like them to be. So that's weird. 2, Lando does get an amazing start, but then he gets penalized because he rolls too far forward and has a 5-second time penalty. So then they're like, oh, let's just serve that real quick because we can get the places back. But it just felt like this was Oscar's race. So dominant for him. And, the McLaren still did well at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I watched an interview from Lando after qualifying, and him saying, it's gonna be hard to win the race. I'm not expecting to win the race, but he wants to get on the podium, and he did. Just looking into that starting grid right after qualifying, something we haven't seen in a while. Carlos Sainz got into 8th. Like we said, Norris was in 6th, Max Verstappen in 7th. So look at that row right there, 6 and 7. And right in front of them was Pierre Gasly, who had a great lap in qualifying.
Absolutely wild that Pierre Gasly, who Alpine had not scored any points, puts together a stellar lap like that and ends up so far up on the grid. It's just
So I think we already know what race Drive to Survive is going to cover for when it gets to the Alpine episode. We already know it's going to be Bahrain 2025, right? Because who knows what else we're going to get from them this year.
Yeah, I know. I have high hopes for them. We were chatting before the recording, and I just said I don't dislike Alpine, but I'm also not particularly rooting for them. They're just one of those teams I forget about, like Aston Martin right now, right? I would just kind of forget about them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't even know what to say about it. Yeah, I mean, they're just something
right.
You really about when you think of Alpine. The only people I can really think about is you think of I know the drivers, but I really don't know a lot about what's going on there because they're just something that they've kind of been irrelevant recently, right? And like you said, they only just scored their first points just recently. We can look into Mercedes. Kimi Antonelli starting 4th after qualifying and then ended up finishing in 11th.
Kimi's doing well despite his finish. He's doing incredibly well for a rookie driver in the Mercedes car. I cannot help but root for Mercedes this year, and I typically don't root for Mercedes, but George Russell's being less annoying. Kimi Antonelli's doing really great. There's great synergy between Kimi and Bono, which I think just helps put the whole thing together. And it doesn't feel from Mercedes, I feel all the pressure's on George, but George is ready for it. I feel with Kimi, they're just small steps every race. Okay, we're going to take this one step at a time. We don't expect you to put it on the podium immediately, right? And you can see how well he's doing because of that. I think he's one of the best rookies this season.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I've never been a Mercedes fan. I was never really a George fan. But I like Kimi a lot. And I think after seeing Mercedes struggle a little bit recently, I'm rooting for them again. I like Toto, which is always good. And it also helps now that I'm rooting against McLaren recently. But like you said, I do definitely like Antonelli better than Russell. But we were talking before about like what these drivers are going to do, right? As Russell's contract is coming up at the end of this year, what will Toto do? Will he look to, if Russell's performing the way he is, Toto will be a dumb not to re-sign him because George Russell is performing amazing.
Yeah, I know all the rumors, right? But like, I don't see Toto switching up this lineup as long as they both perform well. Like, you know, it makes a lot of sense for him to keep George and Kimmy.
Yeah, there's that. Sorry.
No, all this stuff is about, this is all centering around Max and Helmet stirring up a bunch of crap this week because he says he doesn't like drama, but it turns out that maybe he does because he does this. And he's just like saying that maybe Max might leave Red Bull because of the performance issues.
Yeah, it's funny. Like there was that one scene in Drive to Survive when Toto's sitting down with his wife and they're talking about like drivers and what they're gonna do. And I think it was fun. Toto was like, "Well, what about Alonso?" And his wife's like, "No, he's too old." And he's like, "They." But I just thought it was funny. Like that's actually how they think about this stuff. It's like crazy. But there definitely was rumors. They showed that in Drive to Survive as Toto was talking to Jos Verstappen and then what was going to go on there. But like you just brought up with Red Bull, as we move into that conversation, we were saying before, everybody's pulling Max, but I think Max is fine at Red Bull. I think he likes Red Bull where he is now. He has a lot of say in that car. I mean, that car is built for him, and we've seen that.
Yeah, I mean, he still did well for this race. I know that it's still early in the season. I know they're planning some upgrades for later this season. So it's, it will come with time. I have no doubt that Max is still going to be in contention for drivers. And McLaren at the start of last season wasn't performing as well as they were at the end, right? Like it just comes with time. So, I mean, Yuki finally scored some Red Bull points. So yay, a second driver scoring points. It's a big deal, but I think if they can both keep scoring the points, continuing to improve the car, it's hard to say where anyone's going to go in 2026 because of all the regulation changes. Like, I don't know if it makes sense for Max to go anywhere.
Yeah, I was trying to look stuff up the other day about what's going to happen in 2026, who's expected to be going to be doing really well and who should be struggling. And it really sounds like no one really knows what it's going to be like. And obviously, I really doubt that Max really has any idea what it's going to be like. So why would he not wait out his contract? He has several more years at Red Bull. Just to see what's going to happen, right? And especially there was so much talk about him going to Aston Martin. Max is not going to want to go to Aston Martin if they're struggling the way they are now.
No, but they also, Aston Martin's only putting Adrian Newey on the new car. He's not working on the current year's car, right? And let's be honest, Aston Martin's problem is not the money because they have all of that. It's not the design because Adrian Newey's working on the next one, right? Alonso's a really good driver. He proves that week over week. Their weak spot is their second driver and flipping Lance Stroll. You know what I mean? That kid, I don't know if you can convince me that he actually wants to be a F1 driver at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. Every year we see he always has that one race where he performs amazing. And you're like, oh my gosh, how'd that happen? But then every other single race, it's like, oh my gosh, how'd that happen? In the other way, because that's an Aston Martin car that definitely should be towards the middle of the grid. The way it is, man, it's when you see Stroll driving it, it's what is it? What did he finish in Bahrain? If we look at it, he finished in 17th place with an Aston Martin car that really isn't that horrible, compared to these other cars. But it's interesting to see, when we get to 2026, what will Adrian Newey bring to this? Does he make that much of a difference, or really not make a difference because they're refusing to look at the weak spot they have, which is Lance Stroll? And I totally agree with you. You see it with Fernando Alonso, who's a really good driver, but he's trying to get all he can out of this car, And then something else that you can really take out of the Bahrain Grand Prix is how well Haas performs relative to where they started on the grid. So Behrman started in 20th, and then Esteban Ocon started in 14th, which comparatively to how they finished, right? Ocon in 8th and Behrman in 10th. And that's 5 points for a Haas team. 5 points is a big deal.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, I don't like Esteban Ocon. I think he is a turd. However,
Tell me how you really feel.
he does really well. He's doing really well with Haas. He's doing really well with Haas. And Ollie Behrman he finally seems like he's getting more comfortable in the car, right? I feel like he performed great. He's one of my favorite rookies other than Kimmy. He's doing well. You can I feel like you could spook Ollie real easily though right now. And one bad race will take him out. But I think he's doing well.
Yeah. On the other hand, I think I actually kind of like Ocon a little bit. Just like the way that he came up through Formula One. He really didn't come from like a really like rich family that like funded his whole karting. He grew up like a modest like family. I respect him for that. I think he's but I think that's why he cares so much, is because it means a lot to him. Because he obviously he's gone through a lot to get there. And then just like you were saying about Behrman, we're going to talk about Behrman in a second when we get to Saudi Arabia and where we're going to be this week. But this is where Saudi Arabia is where he pulled off his like crazy drive with Ferrari last year. But like we said, 8th and 10th for Haas is a really good start as we get through 2025, and they've had a pretty good start so far through the first couple of races.
I mean, I think another thing to take away, or at least that I'm taking away from this whole thing, is that Ferrari still are on the learning curve for this year. They're not as dominant as they were at the end of last season. Lewis definitely still learning. Leclerc seems continuously determined. It just kind of looks like Lewis is still learning the car.
You look at the qualifying, Leclerc started in 3 and then Hamilton started in 9. And like based off how they finished, Leclerc finishing in 4th, so he went down a spot. He was one of the victims of Lando Norris's great start. But Hamilton, getting his way up to 5th, starting in a tough spot behind Verstappen, behind Norris. So that was definitely, and I think it was also kind of cool to see Hamilton come back from behind and get in front of Verstappen, because Verstappen was really struggling with his pace there at that point. But that's something that you could take away. And like you said, I totally agree with you 100%. Ferrari is struggling, and they're not going to have that dominant car that they wanted. And I don't think that Lewis Hamilton is that dominant driver that they also needed. So it's definitely a struggle to start 25. But like we said with Red Bull, like we'll say with these other teams, is there's still a lot to go. Lewis Hamilton is a very experienced driver. I doubt he's going to struggle like this for much longer. Maybe it will be much longer. Maybe we'll wait until we get halfway through the season. But you have to hope, if you're Ferrari, that he will turn it around soon.
Yeah. I do agree with you. It's Lewis Hamilton, right? I think he has spent the past few years kind of in the middle of the grid where he didn't want to be. I just finished the Mercedes F1 book, and he's very clear in that book that he wanted to try something different and shake things up a bit. And he was definitely going to look at ending his career in Ferrari. So, it's still early in the season. We can still give him some time. I do have another comment on Lewis, though, which is unrelated to the race, but still kind of related to F1. So he was on the cover of Vogue. It was announced yesterday or the day before. I don't remember. And because he's co-chairing the Met Gala this year, which is great. And actually, it's a great fit thematically for Lewis. It's something about black tailoring, which is going to be actually kind of cool. I'm really looking forward to the way that the red carpet, what I anticipate is going to be there. But it all feels like part of this massive PR move that Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton's team did. Like, this all feels like it was part of Lewis's move to Ferrari, but it doesn't feel like it hits right because he hasn't been performing, I think, how he hoped or how everybody hoped in the Ferrari yet. He hasn't come out and like dominated and won a race other than the sprint race. Right. So it's like, it feels very, while it's appropriate thematically, off kilter with his current F1 career. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a little, the balances aren't quite scaled for me to feel like, yeah, this was an amazing PR piece. It just felt like something that they took photos of 4 months ago and planned ahead for. And, that's just what it feels like.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something that he expected, like when his move to Ferrari was made, that, along with like finishing his career right in the red jumpsuit, it was also going to be a big PR stunt. That he's going to be on this like huge, famous, historic team. You go into Vogue, and I really have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know what Vogue is. Sorry, and I've heard the Met Gala. I don't know what that is either, really. So all I remember is that when we talked about Lewis Hamilton going Ferrari, we talked about him wearing the black, the all black, and I remember talking about that. That's the extent of my knowledge.
Athletes use fashion to send a message. Not always, but they do. Just like the royal family uses fashion to send a message, right? Everybody does it. It's strategic dressing, especially when you're at that level. Lewis did it on his first few days in Ferrari. He did it with his last race weekend with Mercedes. Things like that are important to Lewis, so it makes a lot of sense for him, but just the whole like PR push feels a little late and a little behind the 8 ball to how his performance is at F1. So, but yeah, that's my thoughts on Ferrari right now.
Yeah. I think I'm going to jump into something that I'm more familiar with. I'm going to go into, I know, sorry. I'm going to jump into something from the race that I found a little interesting, was the battle between Yuki and Sainz. Right? Did we see that? And that's what the one and only safety car ended up because of that.
Mm-hmm. And Sainz had to retire.
Yeah. The parts that fell off the car that they had to clean everything, I think they were all from him.
Yeah, I mean, Yuki put a wheel into the side of his car, right? So, but I mean, Yuki, man, he's ruthless, but we kind of need that out of the Red Bull driver, so I'm not mad about it. I am disappointed for Sainz, but, Yuki's kind of, I think, taken on the mentality that, like, he has to be ruthless. He has to do what he needs to do to score the points. And he's doing it.
Yeah, I hate to say it like that, but I think he does have to be ruthless if he doesn't want to score points. Because otherwise, I don't think it's going to happen. Like that's a tough car to drive. We talked about that, and I think the car was built for Max, who's a very tough driver. So maybe Yuki's looking right at his teammate Max to see like, look how he drives it. Like maybe I should do something like that. Which isn't a bad idea because, it's a good example. But it's a big deal, right? That was the first time that Red Bull, scored points other than Max. But it was always easy because I could check the Constructors' Championship. I didn't have to look at Max's because I knew that was Red Bull's number because there was no difference. But it was just, it's a big move. I know it's not a ton of points, right? Because he finished in 9th, which is only 2 points. But still, it's a start. It's a start for Red Bull. And like we said, there's so much time. And I think Yuki has so much more growing that he can do for himself.
Yeah, and I think he'll be performing better now that it's not his home Grand Prix, and he has a little, there's not as much pressure as there was that first race, and he can really kind of get in the zone to drive the car and do what he needs to do to score the points.
Yeah, and the last thing I just want to talk about quickly for before we wrap up Bahrain is just Nico Hulkenberg, right? First of all, struggled anyway throughout the race, but ended up getting DSQ, disqualified. I think it was due to something on the bottom. I think it was like some of the plank on the bottom of the car. I don't know if you read up on it.
I didn't. It was the only piece that came through the day of the race that I saw, which was that Hulkenberg got disqualified. And I was just like, okay, he wasn't on my list to win anyways.
Yeah, it really didn't make a difference to what we were looking at.
But yeah, I believe it was something with the floor of his car.
So Hulkenberg just finished in 13th place, which is already outside of the points. But like after further looking at the car, right, I guess the stewards saw that under the car there was just an excess of the amount that was permitted by the regulations. And like we talked about before, when they do these disqualifications, I'm sure that these measurements are so little that they're imprecise that they're looking at, but at one point they have to draw the line. It doesn't matter if you're in first or if you're in 13th, but the line has to be drawn.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it stinks for the driver, but I feel like, it just happened to Ferrari. They're going to be sticklers about it this year.
And we look at something more exciting that's coming up. Formula One, right? This weekend, April 18th to 20th, there's racing in Saudi Arabia at the Jeddah Circuit.
Yeah. It's an F1 Academy weekend, so woo woo. We will talk about that next week. I'm very excited for that. And this is a street circuit, so this is going to be a fun one. I think it'll be, it's also a night race, so super cool. It's one of the, I don't want to say new, it's one of the most recent tracks that has been put on the F1 calendar, because we also have Miami and Las Vegas. But it started in 2021. So I think this will be a really cool race to kind of round out this triple header that we've been on.
Yeah, the first Grand Prix that was held at the Jeddah Circuit was in 2021. 50 laps and a ton of turns. Oh my gosh. Right, I think we were talking about before 27 turns, right, which is insane. 3 DRS zones, which is exciting, right, for our overtaking and stuff like that. But it should be a race that's going to be really exciting. If we look at what happened last year it was Red Bull 1-2 finish, one of the good races by Sergio Perez, finished in second behind Max. And Max finished the race in 1 hour, 20 minutes. So a relatively quick race.
Yeah, I feel like it. I mean, you were talking about the turns, right? Like, I'm literally looking at a map right now of the circuit, and it's very long. Like, it's so long. So then you think 27 turns, how is that possible? But they all kind of like bend into each other. It's almost kind of snake-like as a circuit, like very long and bendy. But I like it. I think it's a great circuit. I think it's one of the most entertaining races on the calendar. It's one of the fastest races on the calendar, behind Silverstone and Monza.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it'll be entertaining to say the least.
Yeah, something that we can look at is from what happened last year. Fernando Alonso had a pretty good qualifying. So on the starting grid, he ended up starting in 4th, which is pretty interesting in that Aston Martin car. And he finished in 5th, which is 10 points for Aston Martin, was a pretty big deal. Also looking about how things finished was Ollie Behrman. This was the race last year that he raced for Ferrari, and he ended up finishing in 7th. Getting 6 points. And I believe this is when Carlos Sainz was out.
Appendicitis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they covered that in Drive to Survive.
They did. Briefly. No, I mean, I think this is going to be a good race this year. I think the grid's going to take a bit of a shakeup, honestly, for this race. I think so early on, we've learned not to count anybody out. So, I mean, it'll be good. It'll be good.
And then if we get into a little bit of the news that's been going around Formula One, this is not like recent news. This has been something that people have been talking about for a while. Max Verstappen, and where will he be going in 2026? I'll make a little mini prediction. I think he's going to stay with Red Bull.
No, I totally agree. No way Max is leaving Red Bull right now. And there's still tons of time for improvement. Helmet's stirring up shit because he likes to do it for fun. And I think it's a decoy play by Helmet, honestly, because I think he can stir up a bunch of stuff about Max's contract and Max being unhappy and all that. And then it takes the spotlight off of whatever's going on that they don't want people talking about, which is probably just their performance and their fall this year. So I don't know. We'll see. But I don't think he's going anywhere.
Yeah, I think there was only talks about Mercedes, but that's not going to happen, I don't think, because George has been doing well. Aston Martin, I really don't think that Max wants to go there because I think they're struggling.
Well, I mean, he could want to go there because they do have the Honda engine next year and they have Adrian Newey. They have a ton of money. But I think the funniest thing about the whole situation was that Alonso was asked about it and he was like, well, I have a contract for next year, so I wouldn't be the driver that was bought. So I thought that was pretty funny. I mean, today in the press conference, he was like, seems like everybody else is talking about this except for me. So he's been very clear where his head is at, and that's on this car this season.
Yeah, I think that Max definitely I think we've seen this before. Max really doesn't want the attention right now. He's more like, let me just focus on my driving. And I think I don't think he's just saying that for the press who doesn't talk to the press. I think that's actually how he feels. I don't think he's really that interested about what he's going to do with this contract. He's probably thinking in the back of my head, I have a contract until 2027. I'll think about it then. Right now I just want to race, and that's what I want to do. I want to get my car better. I want to work with the engineers, which is something that I think he really enjoys doing, working with the engineers at Red Bull and getting the car better every single race.
I would agree with that statement, yeah.
And it's time for us to make predictions for what we think is going to happen at the 2025 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix at the Jeddah Circuit. I'm going to go first because I think I have a relatively normal prediction. Max Verstappen finished first last year, and I said last week, and I'm probably going to keep on saying it, Max will be probably number one on a lot of my predictions because like Max. Go Red Bull. Max is going to be number one. Like I said, I think the car is going to get better. I think they're going to make some adjustments from Bahrain. So I'm going to put Max number one. He did good last year. My number two spot, I think it's crazy for anybody not to put Oscar Piastri on their podium after what he has done this year. Very impressive. Last year he was in fourth. I think he'll do even better this year. And then in my number three spot, I think I'm going to do – actually, I just changed it in my head. I was going to put George Russell. But now that I'm changing my mind, I really like the idea of having Kimi Antonelli making his first podium. And I want to make that a part of my prediction. So I'm going to put Kimi Antonelli in the three spot. Going to put up some good points for Mercedes. Mercedes team that could be in this Constructors Championship if they pick it up. So in summary, Max is my number one, Oscar is my number two, and then Kimi is going to be my number three.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
Okay. I do agree with you on one single point, and I agree that Max is going to take number one spot on the podium.
Wow.
He has a lot to prove. He put a hell of a lap together in Japan. I think he's going to do really well here. Here's where it starts to go in a different direction for me. And I'm going back and forth with number two and number three a lot, but I'm going to make it slightly crazy. And I'm going to say Lewis Hamilton takes the number two spot.
Oh my gosh.
You told me to be crazy. I'm being crazy with the prediction. I think he's going to do well. He pulled out one hell of a race last year in Silverstone. I just think this is the weekend for Lewis. He's going to pull it out. Then I think that last spot is going to be taken by Lando Norris. I think Lando's coming back. He has a lot to prove. I was going to say Oscar, but you said Oscar. So now I'm saying Lando because I don't want to have the same podium as you.
That might be the worst podium prediction we've had all year.
I think Lando's going to do well.
I think Lando, I don't know. I looked at it. Lando finished 8th last year. I don't know. I don't have a lot of confidence.
I think Lando and Lewis and Max all have a lot to prove. And I think that's going to put them on the podium.
Okay.
So, in summary,
I always get yelled at for not putting in summary, so you have to do it.
I'm doing it in summary. I think for Saudi Arabia this year, it's going to be Max number one, Lewis number two, and Lando number three. I mean, really, I wanted to do Max, Oscar, and George, but then that's basically the same podium that you. So, changed it up. But my Formula Fantasy team that is performing so poorly will reflect that.
And that's all for episode 6 of Formula Facts. Thank you so much for joining us. I think we covered a lot today. We talked a lot about Bahrain in a race that really wasn't a lot going on, but we found a lot to talk about, which is good. And then Saudi Arabia should be an exciting race. We'll see what happens. Hopefully this comes out before then, and hopefully our predictions aren't that bad. They probably will be. So thank you for joining us for episode 6. I'm Jack Lake.
I'm Destinee Day.